Hi, and welcome to this week's Meet the Investors. I am here with Ted and Kari, users of Rentastic. Ted, Kari, thank you for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
We were just talking about quotes that our fathers used to say, and it got us going started on laughing. But I just wanted to start with a quick introduction. Obviously, Ted and Kari is Rentastic users. Previous conversation that we had, you started out in 2017, and you have a very unique story. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the investment game.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'll give you the short version. As stated, our first property we bought in 2017. We actually bought that property at the same time we bought our primary house. So let me preference that. I know you're thinking you're kind of old for a primary house.
I was not thinking that, but okay.
So we actually spent most of our married life in Illinois. We moved to Michigan in 2012, and when we moved to Michigan, we moved here and we bought a double wide trailer in a trailer park, and we lived there for like 5 years. So when we moved to Michigan, we bought a double wide trailer. We paid cash for it, and we had like $4,000 or $5,000 in our pocket, and we moved into town. That was it. And so my idea was that we'll live here 2 years and then we'll buy a house.
Get to know the area,
Yeah.
Get our kids established in school and in their life, because they were all upper elementary.
4th through 6th grade.
Yep.
So 2 years turned into roughly 5. And then in 2017, when we were ready to buy a house to live in, that was about a year before that is when I really started looking into the real estate game and said, man, I really want to do this. But I live in a trailer. That's kind of awkward to tell your kids, hey, we're going to buy a rental house before we buy a house. So we bought our primary residence in February. And then in the fall of that year is when we bought our first rental property.
Awesome.
I wasn't part of that whole first
Conversation, huh?
Yeah, he did it, and I'm like, oh, okay, here we go.
No, you said I do.
I did. That covered everything.
I guess so. That was enough for Ted to say, hey, let's get going on this. And I mean, that was your start of it. And now looking at today, you guys are sitting at 7 different properties, which is an amazing journey for what, roughly about 5, almost 6, almost 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your transition, because Kari, you were a teacher, right? And you are a teacher, and you actually help run the operational side of your guys' investment. And Ted, it's obvious that you're the sales guy here in this partnership with the way that you speak with all the amazing sound bites and energy that you bring to the table. So tell us a little bit about your LLC and how you guys work as a partner, and how you've went from 1, 2 properties and now to 7.
I'll let you go.
Well, like I said, when he first bought that first property, I was in the middle of child rearing and my teaching job. And so I would listen. I would go look at properties with him. I would say, oh, that's nice. And then when it was time to do some work in the houses, because we did our own work. We tore out carpet, we painted, we cleaned, all kinds of things, got the kids involved, and we did it as a family. And then we kept adding another house and another house, and he kept saying, I need more help. And I'm like, I am helping. I help out roach droppings and mouse droppings and all the other stuff. But then going through and helping with the paperwork, we really didn't have a system. There was piles on the table, and he'd say, I need help with that. And so he taught me how to use Rentastic and uploading receipts. And then I started just this year, I stepped back from teaching, and now I'm meeting inspectors. I'm
She's
helping
pulling concrete permits
Yeah,
and
pulling
dealing with the
permits.
city and.
So doing all of those things and then, trying to help keep on top of the rent coming in with the tenants and going back and forth with communication and then making sure I'm
Right? Yep, which is still something you owe me. We still have to set up that bookkeeping meeting so we can get you set up with the classification rules, but we'll talk about that later. One thing that I love is that this is not only a joint venture, but we talked that you had the kids involved as well. And my first exposure to rental properties was with my mom, who started her investment portfolio in New Jersey, where we bought our first property, or the property that I was born in Farview Avenue. I still remember it. It was with red paint at the front. It was wooden, and then we moved into Paramus. That became my first exposure. So how is it having the kids involved, and do you feel like that has helped you, be more comfortable saying, every property that we're buying becomes this generational wealth investment that is going to be for our kids?
That's a good question. I really think that is one of the endless benefits that real estate can provide. Obviously, it can provide a steady flow of cash. It can also provide generational wealth. But more importantly, at least at this phase of my life, it taught my kids that, nothing's free in life and there's work that has to be done. So the house that she was talking about was our second house we bought. And right about the time we bought that, so we have 3 kids, and the age difference between our oldest and our youngest, they're 22 months apart with one in the middle. So we have 3 kids that are like
2 years, right? Back to back to back.
That means all of the expenses we don't get to recover. Everything is times 3. So when we bought that second house, at that time the kids were in the youth group at church, and they were going to take a mission trip to Uruguay. And so, the church had some expenses covered, but each of the kids had to cover, I don't remember, it was something like $1,000, $1,500 each or something like that. And of course, can dad write the check? Sure.
And they weren't old enough to hold a job yet,
legally speaking.
Yeah.
And I just kept remembering my dad always told me, hey son, nobody rides for free. Right. So I told the kids, hey, if you want to go on this trip, I'll be more than happy to fund it. But I'm looking for a nice tax deduction for expenses, a way you can earn money. You understand? This is what real estate provides. So we bought that house. The house was previously lived in by 3 adults that were chain smokers. This was a nicotine infested house like I've never dealt with before.
Wow.
So, we're talking ripping all the carpet out, literally washing walls and ceiling down. I remember when my son and I were washing the ceiling down, we literally had nicotine water just raining all over us. It was bad.
And our oldest 2 children are girls that are prissy, and so it stretched them to realize that, when it's okay to roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty, and you can take a shower, it'll be fine.
You'll smell for nicotine for a week, but after that, it'll eventually go away.
They did remind me of that. Dad, we washed our hair 3 times and we still smell like cigarettes. And I kept telling them, no, that's what money smells like.
Yeah, like nicotine, huh?
But they saw dad working and brother working together, and then us girls, we worked together, and so they saw me involved in it, knowing, okay, it's gonna be fine. So you stink a little bit, but that blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, got them so they felt good at the end of the job, and they ripped up all that carpet and padding, and they wore their mask and their gloves and rolled it all up and carted it out, and they didn't complain, and I was so proud of them. So it was a good family time, spending time together, and then with the reward of the money for hard work.
That's amazing.
So that enabled me to pay them for working, which then obviously in real estate, that allows me a tax deduction. You know, these are all legal ways that our government allows us to proceed in life.
Yep.
And it really, that was a huge lesson that is still with them today. My son now is looking to buy his first rental property. These are all things that what I thought was a very small thing then has really lasted for years. And
his sister is willing to go in on it with him, knowing that it might take a little hard work, but we've done it before. How hard can it?
I mean, if I had to sit there and spray water and had nicotine drop on me, I mean, at that point, right? That's probably the dirtiest well, there's a little bit dirtier, but that for the most part, that's probably the dirtiest of, I mean, properties that you're going to be getting is one that you pretty much have to renovate from to the bare bones, right? So anything easier than anything after that, it pretty much becomes a walk in the park for them. So that the value that you learn really translates to years, if not generations, of understanding how to utilize investment properties as not only an income stream, but like you said, Ted, the ability to utilize it and start to learn about the ways to utilize the properties to lower your taxes, because at the end of the day, money runs around the world and that's really why we're doing all this. So what are some of the tips and tricks? And because one thing I got to say that I really appreciate about the two of you is you're not your typical investor, right? Husband and wife, which is always an amazing couple. It could either go really, really well, it could go really poorly. So I'm happy on this side, the two of you were able to make it work. What are some of the tips and tricks that you've learned, that you've come across, that maybe, investors that have been doing it for many years could have taught you that you learned on your own?
So one of the first ones on this property, because that was our second one, obviously, I'm running to Home Depot, Menards, it seemed like sometimes twice a day. Those receipts starts to stack up quick. And at that point, from an accounting standpoint, I was just using the, Excel spreadsheet.
Yep.
And it was 100% manual. And I thought, oh my goodness. And, all it takes is you lose a few receipts here and there. And now I don't have deductions. I pay more in taxes, this, that, and the other. And this was where I started to investigate an accounting software. And the truth is, if you go out there and look today, you can find 100 of them. Yep. And I literally looked at Rentastic along with a couple other of the known brands.
Yeah, you mentioned that you started with Stessa before you.
Yeah. So I started with Stessa, and they have a couple different options. It didn't work good for me. My accountant actually tried to steer me toward QuickBooks Online. Of course, I looked at that, and to be honest with you, I think for real estate, it's garbage. Of course, that's my opinion. It's not set up well. It's not user friendly. Here's the truth. I don't come from an accounting background. My wife is a school teacher. We're not stupid, but we also don't have hours to spend at this. Right. So once I stumbled onto Rentastic, it was set up and it was geared toward real estate. It was easy to use, easy to set up, easy to customize.
Same lingo. That was one of the things we noticed.
Everything pulls right in, and all of a sudden that administrative side of our business that was starting to become a lot of hours of work became a lot easier.
That's amazing. I mean, that's obviously what we're here for, and what we're trying to do with Rentastic is to just make accounting easy, where you don't automate it. And again, Kari, I'm going to say it again, we got to get a call so we can make this easier for you. So software, I mean, are there any other softwares other than Rentastic that have come? Because I mean, from what I'm hearing is, and that's the reality of it, right? The busy work for having the property is really the accounting side of it, right? Where you have your income, you have your expenses, you got to track it, make sure that you can write it off at the end of the year for your taxes with your accountant. What are some other softwares that you've come up and you've come across that you felt that have made your life a little bit easier when it comes to your investments?
Well, I've been learning how to use Tenant Cloud.
Okay.
In fact, I was banging my head against the wall today trying to figure out something that wasn't working right. Figured it out. When you put information in, finish the whole process. I had entered a tenant and then didn't finish it all the way because I was trying to be proactive. Okay, I'll get it all the information in. Well, then when it was time to do all the move in, actually, I shot myself in the foot and made myself spend extra time. But Tenant Cloud has, so far, I like it. But we only use it basically for keeping track of our tenants and collecting. They can pay their rent through that. We can keep track of leases and different paperwork. It's all uploaded, so it's all in one place. So getting rid of the stacks of paper. That's one of the things that we're trying really hard to go paperless, because trying to keep files like we used to. And I feel bad that I wasn't involved sooner, because I was so
Aw.
doing everything else. I felt like he was doing it all by himself. And now that I see all of this, I'm like, oh my word, that was a lot for him to be doing. So I'm glad to be able to help with that, at least eliminate paperwork for him and keep on the little details, because I'm a detail.
Yep. Well, give us a quarter and we'll take over Tenant Cloud as well, because we're the next update for us. Yeah.
I told Kari, I said, you wait. We can get rid of Tenant Cloud soon.
Yeah, the next update that we're coming up with is one allowing you to add tenants and obviously manage tenants' date of births, documentation, leasing, and all that. Where right now you can, right now you're using the receipts, which other users are using the receipt upload for them to hold their leasing documentation as well. But in the next update, we'll allow you to categorize the documentation that you're loading outside of just loading receipts, where you can say, this is my leasing contract, this is the 1090 or whatever documentation, W-2 that I need to hold for my tenants. And then we're also going to be allowed to start to create portfolios. From there, we're going to start to implement documentation so that you can send documents through Rentastic, have them signed as well, and then ultimately collect rental property, collect your income for rents as well. So
yeah, so she didn't comment on the third one. So we use Doc Hub
okay,
to basically do like e-sign,
yeah.
Because
So
at the end of the day, I don't want paper in my life. So I want to send it out, you sign it, send it back.
Save the trees, save the trees.
But to have everything in one
Yeah.
spot. So I'm coming, I know I taught kindergarten. Okay. I know that I taught my children, okay, you got to try it. You got to learn this. You got to practice it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
I haven't heard that one
So
before.
I'm learning 3 different things right now, and my brain is scrambled trying to keep everything separate. And so yeah, to have one place where I could do all of that would be awesome.
But the big thing that we use Tenant Cloud for is for collecting payments, because our policy is we do not collect money orders, we do not collect check, and I don't take cash. Everything must be electronic, because I'm too lazy to go to the bank for a deposit.
Well, it's not laziness. After, again, like you said, after you get past, the second or third investment property, everything needs to be systemized, right? You have to have your SOBs, your operational practices, and you have to keep it similar across the board, especially if you don't have a management company, which is a different conversation, because even then you probably have 3 different management companies and each one does it differently, which is a different conversation. But you have to have processes for scalability. I mean, there only becomes so much that you can do when it comes to, one-offs or mechanically bullying it. And obviously that's where, when it comes to our vision and our mission statement, what we want for Rentastic is to do exactly what, make your lives, and you're the perfect user for us. And because we're looking to make your lives simpler when it comes to managing everything that you need in one platform. So keep at it. Don't let us, don't let us don't let up off the gas pedal, because it's conversations with you, Ted and Kari, and your feedback that allows us to really take conceptually what we want to produce and put it in a way that makes it, actual actionable items, where you are now, having everything done in one platform. One thing I really love to talk about are strategies, especially with the two of you, because you have a strategy that works. Leveraging from one property to another. Walk me through a little bit, if you can, what strategies you're using to find properties and determine whether they're actually investment worthy.
Okay, so this is kind of an interesting question now, because it was just the other night we were talking. I said, hey, I know I was just looking at, and she said, please tell me you're not going to buy another house. Okay, no, How about roofs? When we talk about roofs, I'll buy one roof. I didn't tell her how many doors were under the roof though.
How many windows is one garage?
So, at least up to this point, we pretty much used we're in Detroit Metro here. So we have three houses in one city, two in another, and then we actually have one in Detroit City, the city. Because we're in those areas, we know exactly what I can get for rent. So my formula is pretty easy. I know what I can get for rent. I know what my house payment, my taxes, and insurance has to be max. So when I'm looking through, the MLS or wherever online, I know just by looking at the purchase price if I can make money on it. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. However, we're at the point now with single family houses where we've decided, we're not interested in buying any more houses. Multifamily is now our next move. We want to get into a little bit larger properties. But I guess to answer your question, everything for me is about the ROI. If I'm going to put cash out to work, I need to know what is that cash going to return to me in terms of money. Obviously, with interest rates going up here over the last year, that's made things a little
interesting,
a little more interesting, but we didn't start buying properties. Our first house we bought in the late 90s, and our first primary house we bought, we were paying 8.25%.
Wow.
And at that time, that was just normal. That was normal.
Right.
That's right. And I remember my dad telling me back then, "Oh, son, if you're under double digits, that's great." So literally from that day forward, as I was doing my own underwriting to determine, is this worth buying? I factored everything at 8%, even when I was buying them at 3%. So I automatically factored everything with an 8% interest rate, and I've been doing that for years. And to this day, I've never paid 8%. So I listen to a lot of people cry about the interest rates right now, and I'm thinking, well, if these things are slowing you down, I think that's great, because I'm just going to keep on running.
I love that. I think the difficulty lies with the newer generation coming in, being comfortable with the 3%, the 4%, right? And then seeing the property prices skyrocket 10, 20%, and then the interest rates skyrocketing, right? And interest rates, even at what they are now, when you look at when they were at 20% at one point back in the you're in good shape. It's the property prices that I think scare people. When it comes to the down payment, the first home, your first home interest is pretty decent when it comes to your down payment. When you buy your first purchase, you're at 2%, 3%. So are you putting 20% down on properties, or are you finding ways to put less than that?
It ranges between 20 and 25% max.
25%.
Okay. That's what I would say on the high end
industry. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually factor 2 to 3% closing costs. So, when I'm doing my initial high level analysis, I just use 28% down. That's down payment, closing cost, any miscellaneous, whatever. But just maybe I'll put my wife on the spot. So we actually just did a renewal on one of our tenants, and we just increased the rent. Do you recall approximately how much money we increased the rent per month?
Was it 300?
$300 a month.
Yeah, 3.
So we increased that property $300 a month. So my question to anybody who's concerned about interest rates, I don't care if you're getting a rate at 6, 7, 8, or 9%. That's a locked-in rate. Mm-hmm. Your payments isn't going to change for the next 20, 25, 30 years, depending on how you am it out. My tenants are seeing increases of $100 to $300 a month. And that's why I told my son, I said, son, if you're renting, who knows what they're going to do with the rent next year, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. Lock it in now. I don't care what the rate is, and just go.
Yep. Worst case scenario, refinance, right? Regardless of the property prices are, if you think about it year over year, 5 years, 10 years, if you plan on sitting on it for, especially if your son's getting in early, he's going to hopefully, leverage that for the next property as the property prices go up. In 10 years from now, your property price is going to be up pretty much, there's no guarantee, but with the market, I don't see it coming down. So
Property that we just talked about a few minutes ago that we got our kids involved in, we just refinanced that a few months ago, and I pulled out $60,000 in cash.
which now leverages to the down payment of your next investment property. And you know what I like it, Ted, and the way you explain it, you simplify it, and there's so many different strategies that come around, and when it comes down to it, when you look at it, can my rent cover my mortgage cost? And most people tend to, especially those who are early on or in their first or second property, tend to kind of lose the fundamentals of this strategy or formula of rent covers mortgage. I'm in good shape.
Yeah, and
So appreciate
yeah,
that.
I know even when I bought my first house, I went through the same thing I think a lot of people did. You're sweating bullets and you're thinking, did I make is this the right decision? And and there's 1,000 formulas out there. At the end of the day, though, if the numbers are even remotely close, and you feel it's a decent area, just jump. Just jump. That's how my dad taught us how to swim. He said, just jump off the dock, buddy. You'll figure it out.
That's
And
awesome.
we just had a place you put an offer in, and the worst they can say is no. I mean, somebody else beat us to it or whatever. So, I mean, I think about how many offers we put on houses when we're looking to buy our personal home.
Mhm.
It 6 of them went, we went through 6 different offers. And of course, he's always telling me, it's not, don't think with your heart. Don't think with your heart. It's a business decision. And
Right.
so that helped me keep myself in check, because as a woman, you get attached to something, you can see yourself living in there, and you make an emotional decision. And he's always telling me, it's a business decision. Don't make it about your emotion. And so you have to be willing to just sit back and wait for a little while until the right one comes along. And even with the rentals, we see that too.
I just tell her that making money in real estate, you just need to be good at 3rd grade math. And if you think about it, every formula you have ever seen, it's 3rd grade math. Add this plus this divided by this times this is money. That's it. That's how it works.
Yep.
So I hate to break the news to you kids, you don't need algebra.
Darn it! I wish I had kept it. Do you have bank accounts set up for each individual property so that you have your income and expenses? Do you bucket everything?
So we do have an LLC set up. We do have a bank account for that. And currently, we have one for those properties. We are in the process now as we're moving forward and expanding a little bit larger to form a second one. But currently we have one business account that's set up, structured under LLC for the state of Michigan. And then everything runs through that. So like in terms of Rentastic, so we have a credit card dedicated just for the rentals. And then we have a bank account just for that. And then we have that tied to Rentastic, so that automatically pulls everything over from those credit cards.
Awesome. Yeah,
So the bad thing is I used to be able to buy stuff and she didn't know, but
and now that she's managing Rentastic, everything is put in front of her, huh? Never thought of it that way. Yeah, but so we come across a lot of users or newer investors who don't have the bank account set up and don't have the LLC or C Corp set up. So why an LLC, out of curiosity? Was there a strategic benefit to having an LLC versus a C Corp or an S Corp?
so first of all, I'm not an accountant or attorney. So I chose an LLC because at least at the time I set it up, that was the best structure for where we're at. And I think, if you seek out professional advice, they'll tell you probably starting out, that probably is at least the good place to start. But then as you grow, we're now at the point where we need to start looking at reclassifying our legal entity structure, whether it be to move into an S Corp, or you can even have an LLC that is taxed as an S corp. So those are the things that we're looking at now. And those are the things that, when you buy that first house, you say, okay, I got my spreadsheet and maybe a separate bank account and everything's good. And then you get the second one, you're like, okay, it's a little more work. And then when you get 3 and 4, you're like, oh boy, yeah, this is getting a little crazy. And that we're kind of at that point now where to grow means expanding to that next level entity structure, whatever that may be.
That's awesome. It makes me happy to see whenever we have partners like you who are ready to take it to that next level. And telling your story is always very empowering for people who are either getting into the business or are 1 or 2 steps behind you, knowing that there are, people like you who have made it in the investment game and are looking to get into the multifamily, especially when you have your first 7 single properties. I mean, that's awesome to hear. So kudos to you and keep up the amazing work, you two. You were telling me a funny story, which I want you to bring up, because you were talking about going to Mexico and using Mexico as a training for Rentastic. What are some strategic or interesting ways that you found expense writing off that you can do now that you weren't able to do previously?
Oh boy, that's the fun part. So we discovered that, the law actually, it's against our wishes, but the law requires me to have an annual meeting because we have a legal entity. So not a problem. My wife is a little partial to Puerto Vallarta. So we make.
We went to Puerto Escondido too.
Oh yes, we did Puerto Escondido.
Got caught because of a hurricane.
Oh no.
So we had 3 more days. And that was the trip where he taught me how to learn Rentastic while we were sitting when the weather was yucky.
Sitting in the middle of a hurricane.
And I had my first lesson on how to use Rentastic, and I learned it within, I don't know, half hour.
Yeah, so I figure if the government is going to subsidize an annual meeting, I'm not going to have that in Michigan, that's for sure. But there's all the rules and the regulation around that. So you can your travel to and from your meeting is definitely a deduction, along with certain expenses, not all, but certain ones while you have the meeting. And of course, we keep meeting minutes of our annual meetings of the topics that were covered, the timeframes, and the educational parts, and of course, there's usually a dinner involved. But I would say that's one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Annual meeting for sure, and don't be cheap about your annual meetings, because I like to keep company morale up. So I need to make sure that we have nice meetings.
Very important.
What better place to take down the minutes and the agenda and record everything than a tropical place? So yeah, my computer works there too.
Yep. It's very important, like you said, to keep the morale up. And so is this something when it comes to the strategy or the other expenses? Are there other expenses that you have seen that have been beneficial?
So, as obviously we grown our portfolio past 1 or 2 houses, things like whether it be mileage for your personal vehicle.
That's important, right?
Or you literally just buy a vehicle dedicated to that. Those are really big ones right there. If you think in terms of just a vehicle expense, what that means to the average household, if you could reduce that either by eliminating one whole vehicle expense, or not eliminating, but moving that to a business expense, that's a huge one. But then there's a lot of smaller things that people don't think about. Your cell phone, a portion of internet at home. People can go on and look at the IRS, rules on home office space and whatnot. There's a whole host of deductions that can be had in that area.
I think what we found to be very helpful is to definitely keep things separate. Only business on business card. Don't say, oh, well, I'll remember to do it, because you won't. Keeping it totally separate, very helpful, especially for people just getting into it, because you think,
Right.
oh, it's no big deal. Yeah, it adds up really, really fast.
Right.
She's only saying this because when we were at the annual meeting this last year, she said, well, the masseuse that's coming up. I said, honey, no, that's
I'm glad you've got the rules figured out. Well, Ted and Kari, I mean, I think we just, again, the two of you are really amazing, and I love what you guys are doing in the real estate game, and I'm really rooting for the two of you. Not that you need my rooting, because you've already made it, and it sounds like you already got a clear path to where you want to go to take it up to the next level. I really appreciate the two of you very, very much, not only as fantastic users, but just as our conversation. So thank you so much for joining me. You guys are just wonderful and amazing, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for
So-
having us.
I'm gonna leave you with some homework.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you take over Rentastic, or you take over Doc Hub and Tenant Cloud. I want to eliminate them. It's your job to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have, and I think I mentioned this when we talked last. We have Set Schedule, which is, it's not a parent company. It's the original company that I started with, and we have Set Sign. And with Set Sign, we're only using it for our own internal invoicing, and ultimately that's what's going to transfer over to sending out documentation. So that should be implemented. And then the tenant, like I said, give us about a quarter, and that'll be fully fleshed out with tenants, with portfolios, with being able to collect rent, and then the second quarter, in about 2 quarters from now, that's when we're going to get into the lending services, where we can actually, through Rentastic, find lenders for properties and actually pay out your mortgages that way as well. So we've got a lot coming up in the next 2 quarters. So all your feedback is going to be greatly appreciated. I'm going to look for the two of you to kind of help guide us in what we're doing well and what needs to be improved on.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and we'll schedule your bookkeeping meeting. And I know I've said it 3 times, but we got to do that. So we'll get that going with you guys. Yes, yes, yes.
All right, it's good talking to you. You have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Ted. Thank you, Kari. Take care.